Hello, I'm Amy from moonmindology.com, and today I want to have a look at Kamala Harris's chart. So what we first can see here is that her ascendant is in Mrigashira. So this is symbolized by the deer, and very often with people who have this quite strong, you can see that they do have doe eyes, like the deer, as the deer represents that nakshatra. So another really interesting thing about this nakshatra is that Brihaspati, otherwise known as Jupiter, was married to Tara. So the ruling deity of this nakshatra is Soma, otherwise known as the moon. And Soma fell in love with Tara. He eventually convinced her to commit adultery and she turned him away from Brihaspati. So after a period of time, she said, I don't want to go back, blah, 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 blah. But eventually she returned to Brihaspati, her rightful husband. But in the meantime, she had become pregnant. So she tried to keep the secret for a long time, but eventually he found out. And this is the interesting thing, because he took the child as his own because the child was so charming. So as you can see, the literal representation with Kamala Harris, I'm pretty sure she acts as a mother figure to her stepchildren. And I think that she's close to her niece as well, which is really interesting. So that can be a literal representation of taking on other people's children. So she is a Gemini ascendant at 1 degree, which is exactly conjunct Rahu. So this is quite an interesting placement, as this is said to be a destiny point. So when it's close to the ascendant, there will be a sense of destiny. So you may want to go one way and do that, but there's always a pull back to where you should be. There can also be a poor self-esteem because Rahu is a malefic. So when it sits on that ascendant, it can have malefic properties. So there can be a sense of a lack of self-worth, but it can also, because of the nature of Rahu, produce an overconfidence to make up for a sense of inadequacy that's within. But also the start of life can be difficult. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, which goes to the 5th house. So there is an interest in children and creativity. But Mercury is combust, sitting within 4 degrees of the sun. So this can burn the mind, and this can cause a high stress, and people can struggle to switch off at night, constantly thinking. And also you've got the moon is debilitated in Libra. So she can, once again, have signs of having low confidence and giving her power away to other people. So also there's that effect on Mercury. And what is Mercury? Mercury is all about the speech and communication. And if you've seen Kamala Harris, she isn't the clearest speaker. She knows how to use a lot of words, but the words ultimately don't really mean much that I've seen. But this is a great example of Neptune. Neptune is all about illusions. It's things that are not quite real, and it can create a lot of confusion. So sitting next to Mercury, confusing words, confusing communication. But I guarantee that she's incredibly poetic. And if she put her mind to some kind of creativity, I wouldn't even be surprised if she did art or music. That would be very unsurprising. With a Mercury that's that affected, and also a debilitated Mars, which we will come on to later, you would kind of think to yourself that maybe the intelligence is hurt a little bit. But she's got a very bright moon, which is good for the mind and the subconscious. But one thing I do want to touch upon, which is incredibly, I think, the source of all her power, Saturn. So Saturn is in Aquarius and it's in its Mula Trikona position. So that is an incredibly strong and happy place for Saturn to sit. And it's also very close to the midheaven. The career was always going to be Saturn related. And Saturn's about institutions and government. She works for the government. So that's a literal representative of that combination, which is very, very interesting. But the ninth house is about justice and law. She's a lawyer by trade. And the ninth house is your higher education. So she would have worked very, very hard. It would have been a case of if she ever had any problems with her higher education, it would have been a case of she just stuck to it. And it's her maturity and her dedication that can get her through anything. And I think sometimes people who are really flat out highly intelligent, sometimes they don't quite know what they're doing with themselves because they don't have that help from Saturn, which is very grounding and keeps you focused. And if you don't have that, yeah, you might be really intelligent, but how are you going to focus that if it's all over the place? But also equally, someone could have problems with communication and they might come across as not being 100% with it. And she doesn't come across as being with it sometimes. But clearly, she is very intelligent in the way that she really stuck her nose to the grind and achieved really, really great things. So going to debilitated Mars in the second house. So Mars in the second house is your money. Sometimes it can burn a hole in your pocket. So there's a generosity and a penchant for spending money. She may give a lot of money away, especially with Mars being the 11th ruler. So she might give away a lot of money to charity. But you also have to think Mars, debilitated, second house. Second house is your early life. So this is the environment that she was growing up in. So there could have been a lot of passive aggressiveness, a lot of angry words, and a lot of arguments. We do know that her parents did split up. So this kind of gives you an idea about the environment that she was in. It is at the exact debilitation degree. So it's 27 degrees and 56 minutes. And the debilitation exact is 28 degrees. So we are the highest point of debilitation. This is really intense. So you will find that with a debilitated Mars, so your Mars is your action and your outward aggression. So the more healthier it is, the more able you are to control those things and express them in a healthy way. However, when they're debilitated, these people can be quite reactive, and the really tiny things can really annoy them quite heavily. So they can be quite insecure. So it can create some anxiety and a short temper. But also the second house is your speech. So the words can be very cutting. She can, and I have seen her be very, very cutting, abrupt, and she fights. She just put up a big fight. But we have to bear in mind, there's a couple of things. I didn't cover this exactly with the sun, But in medical astrology, where you have debilitations, very often it shows you where and how there can be health problems. So with a debilitated sun in the 5th, that's telling me that's double confirmation of the lumbar region and the heart, and that's output, that's heart output. 4th house is heart input. So that's blood to the heart. This is blood out of the heart. So those are weak points. But also a debilitated Mars says there's a problem with the blood as well and the muscles. So there can be weaknesses in that area. But not only that, it can be 2nd house, face, teeth, mouth, thyroid gland. So I'd say she probably, malefic in the 2nd, she probably has weak teeth. She probably has tooth problems. But there's a little bit of a relief here. A little bit. Mars is always still debilitated, but it's in a Parivartana yoga with the moon. So this gives it a little bit of strength. So this may make her very competitive, and she may be able to express Mars a little bit better, and it may be a little bit stronger, but there is still issues with how that Mars works. So she can have a problem with her temper. So the moon in the 11th house is in a really good position. So the moon is the mother and the 11th house is your groups and your friends. So her mother would have been a friend. There is 2 afflictions from Saturn and Ketu, but the moon is so bright from that exact opposition from the sun, and also an aspect from Mercury, which is a benefic. So the moon rules the 2nd house and it goes to the 11th. These are 2 money houses. This is a connection of 2 money houses, which means that she can find money from multiple incomes and multiple streams and sources. She's not just getting an income from her vice president job. She's got other sources that she's getting money in from. She's good with money. She knows how to spend it, but she knows how to make it as well. We can then look at Venus. So looking at Venus, it is almost exactly conjunct Pluto. So this combination can be quite difficult, as Venus is the Karaka for relationships and love, and when it is with Pluto, you can find that there can be power struggles in relationships, and you can be really attracted to powerful partners, but there can also be quite an intensity with that. Also, Venus rules the reproductive organs, so there can be problems with the reproductive system. So I don't know whether it was a case of Kamala chose not to have children, or whether it wasn't necessarily a choice. As I said, the debilitated sun and combust Mercury in the 5th, and it's also sitting with Neptune. So there's a lot of indecision there, but also a lot of signs saying, no, it's not going to happen. So once again, there's a problem with Venus, which represents the reproductive organs. But also you've got Uranus with Venus. So that can be, there's a lot of change in the mind of lovers. I mean, she's been with her current partner for quite a long period of time now. I think 10 years next year. Yeah, 2014. So she's not showing any signs of chopping and changing, but there can be an attraction to an eccentric character. I don't know anything about her husband really, but he could be quite eccentric. I know that he's also in politics, so that could be the power, that could be the Pluto power. I can see relationship issues here because 7th house, Ketu is there. So that can indicate a loss of the partner, but it can also indicate a spiritual partner with unusual eyes, or even an addicted partner. So just because K2 means loss. It doesn't always mean exactly that's the end. It doesn't mean that just because K2 is associated with fire, that your partner is one day going to burst into flames. It doesn't work like that. And the best way to deal with these kind of things and remedy them is to find the positive sides of that planet. So for instance, with K2, spirituality and unusual eyes. And when you meet someone who fits that description, then you could go, oh, this is a remedy. This is a remedy for the problem that I have. So if her husband is spiritual, that's going to be a great thing for her karma in that respect. But there can be a sense of disappointment with the partners, because when you look at Rahu, those are the things that you want to get in touch with. So as I said, she wants to get in touch with herself. She wants to know who she is, because there's a lack there. That's where she's going. She wants to discover the truth about who she is. And in your previous life, where K2 sits, that's where you've given a little bit too much. So it goes one way or the other. And so what you want to do is leave behind the 7th house, where K2 is, because that's where you gave too much before. And she's also got that karma playing out with the sun debilitated in the 5th house. She gives too much in her love affairs. So that's really quite an interesting dynamic here. And you can see it all leads back to how she was brought up, her relationship with her father and her parents' relationship. It's really interesting to see how that all plays out into the psychological programming of somebody. It's all about our early lives. Then she's got Jupiter in the 12th house. Now Jupiter is the Karaka for children, and when it's in a Dastana like the 12th house, that's another sign that she's not going to have children. Jupiter is about foreigners, it's about foreign travel, and the 12th house is also about foreigners. So this is about foreign affairs. What does she do the most as the Vice President of the United States? She works with foreign countries, foreign leaders. This is a wonderful planet to have here. This is great. It also gives an attraction to culture as well. And she was very lucky growing up, because she had access to the Jamaican culture, which is what her dad is from, the Indian culture, which is where her mum is from, but also the American culture. So she had a real fuse of multiple cultures in which to expand on and understand and really become close to. I wouldn't be surprised if she's spiritual as well. If she does become the first female president of the United States, and she can calm down that sharp tongue, I think she could do a really good job dealing with other foreign ambassadors and leaders. So now I want to have a quick look at the dashas. So Kamala is currently in the Vimshottari system. She's in Rahu Mahadasha. So where is Rahu? It's in the 1st house. So this is really about learning herself and getting to know who she is. And if you think about it, it started in 2012. So the major milestones in her political career, and also she got married in this Mahadasha, which she did. She got married in 2014. So as these are all things that she's discovering about herself. They're big, major milestones that expand who we are and who we're becoming. So this is all about her evolution. Now she's also in the Bhukti of K2. So this is all about relationships. And relationships isn't just about your marital partner. That's a relationship to your boss, to the public. It's a relation to other people, but it can be romantic. As I said, during that time, she has climbed to a new high in her career. And in the Vimshottari system, the most important planets that are transiting are those that you're in the dasha of. So currently you've got Rahu in the 11th house, and it's going to be crossing over her moon halfway through this year, and Ketu is in her 5th. So these two houses are very politically oriented. However, Rahu and Ketu move backwards. So when they change signs, they'll be going into Pisces, her 10th house, and Virgo, her 4th house. 10th house is the career, 4th house is moving. So there is a possibility that she will be moving to a new residence and getting a promotion. So there's only one place she could go from here, and that's President of the United States. If we look at Yogini, she is also in the Rahu Mahadasha. If you look at her progressed Lagna, it moves to the Nakshatra Hasta, which is in Virgo. So from Virgo, Rahu in her natal chart now sits in the 10th house. So this is going to be one of the most important things of this period. So that started in 2021. And she's going to be moving into Rahu Moon. So that is going to be in the next few days, 18th of April, she will be moving into that. Now, there could be some rockiness due to the fact that the moon is in the 8th from her progressed Lagna. So that could be secrets. That could be corruption. There could be something going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, that she knows about. She could use it to advance, or it could just be coincidental that she does advance, or something happens, and because of that, there is the advancement. But it's possible. The moon is bright, and it could be an opportunity for her to move up in the world, especially as the moon rules the 11th from the progressed Lagna. So now looking at the transits, Jupiter is currently transiting through the 10th house in Kamala's chart. Kamala is a Gemini ascendant, so Jupiter rules 2 angles, so it's not always the greatest. So that could be something putting a bit of a downer on her career. I know she's been a little bit missing in action as of late, but when Jupiter moves into her 11th house, you could find that career starts to grow. Then Rahu, later on this year, is going to go backwards into that 10th house, and that could be a great expansion point. So if we look at these transits, around the 13th of April, Jupiter is going to be fully aspecting Mars. So this could be a time where she's quite reactive. She could be prone to anger. She could be inclined to speak out about something. She may have a big opinion that she just can't keep quiet. 10th of May, Jupiter's going to transit the moon. Now, this is a really interesting one because, as I've said, Jupiter has a little bit of a malefic quality, or it loses its ability to do good because it rules 2 angles. So when it goes over the moon, there could be a sense of disruption to her mind. There could be an emotional disturbance. Something could happen that makes her feel perturbed. But these are 2 great benefics, so it could have an impact of a real positive thing for her. It could be a positive effect in her groups, with her friends, or 11th house is very political. It could be a political advancement. On the same day, Jupiter is going to be opposing the Sun. So again, this can give great confidence. This is an aspect in the 5th house. So this could be political as well. But sometimes Jupiter can be too much. As I've said, it can be overbearing. So there could be an arrogance, but also could give a sense of authority. This could be moving into a leadership role during this time. Around the 26th of May, Jupiter fully aspects Mercury. So she could be very vocal during this time, but it's also a great time to plan for the future. But it gives her a boost because Mercury is the ascendant ruler. So at that point, there could be a lot of traveling as well. So on the 31st of July, Ketu transits the Sun. So the Sun can be your health. It can also be your career, your boss, other things like that. In the 5th house, her creativity could be stifled. But there could be health issues. But there could be problems with her father or with, as I've said, Joe Biden, the boss. Could be something that happens during that time. I know around that time there are some transits in his chart. So there could be a transfer in power around about that time. And on the 1st of August, Rahu transits her moon. Now, the moon is the mind. And Rahu is essentially a poison. So it can give you the feeling of paranoia. So there could be something that they feel really up against because Joe Biden has his moon in around about the same place. So they're both going to be feeling the same things at the same time. But also, this could be her expressing herself. This could be her stepping up. An opportunity for her to speak freely. She may speak up about something that she feels passionate about during this time. She may even find some kind of political independence as well. So she doesn't have any more transits for the rest of the year, but things could still happen as late as November. So this is going to be a really, really interesting time. Thank you very much for listening to me today, and I hope you enjoyed my interpretation of Kamala Harris's chart. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this content. Thank you very much. Bye.